Misnometer number one. Let's see here. I can use my same bag of tools for R-410a and R-32 systems. What do you guys think?
So, there are a few different tools that you'll need for the R-32 systems. One of which is a left-hand threaded adapter or hose to connect to the refrigerant tank. Not to connect to the heat pump itself. You still use a mini split adapter for the GREE equipment. It's not going to be any different. And then you'll need a few specific tools. Jesus, you want to share a little bit about the specific things that we need?
Yes. So you'll need I don't know did you just address this, the micron gauge? And you would really want to make sure that your instruments that you have are compatible with, A2L refrigerants. And a good thing that I like to do whenever I was out in the field is pretty much keep separate gauges. So like, for instance, now that it's 410A, have a set of gauges for 410A, have a set of gauges for R32, and so be it, depending on the refrigerant that you are working with. That way, you don't have any kind of cross-contamination with hooking up the systems and, pretty much your refrigeration going through your gauges back into the system that you're working
Is
on.
it question for you, Jesus, or James as well? Is there a concern about cross contamination with R32 versus 410A as far as the oil goes, or like what if you did use the same set of hoses?
That's a good question. James, you got anything on to say about that?
Yeah, I definitely do. You are only supposed to have the things that are supposed to be inside that system. So if you think there's a risk of cross-contamination, I'd absolutely encourage you to mitigate that risk as much as possible, or in other words, reduce that risk as much as possible. I think if I were doing it again, if I was in the field again, I might have a set of gauges that I use for new installations and a set of gauges that I use on the 30-year-old package unit on a post office. So that I don't, I'm not sending old, gross stuff, green stuff, into my brand new equipment. And I know that's money. I get it, but tools could make it a lot easier and can make for a longer lasting system. Now, we definitely don't want R32 in our 410A systems. We don't want 410A in our R32 systems. Another one is to keep in mind on the oil, right? You've got mineral oil systems, you've got PVE systems, you've got POE systems. They're not supposed to be mixed, and they're not supposed to have, the opposite oil placed in them. The testing data, all the ratings on the equipment, all of that stuff is based on the limitations of the equipment and the design of that equipment. So if it's designed to have PVE and R32 in that system, ensure that you've got PVE and R32 only in that system, right? What does it do? I don't know. You know, we've got
We don't
tested.
want to find out, right?
No, we don't. We
So,
don't. I mean, everybody likes to have a lab like back at the house or something like that, where they hooked up their own stuff and they want to
In the
see what
garage.
they do. And yeah, now I mean, I've seen some comments on some of the Facebook groups and stuff. Like, I've heard people drop, different refrigerants into different systems, and everything's working great and all the rest of that. Um, you know, you've got companies that spend a whole lot of money on R&D and putting their equipment in labs and testing it and all that, and then there's a guy on Facebook. How about having a set of gauges, for instance, that's got the A2L refrigerant on it? I think it's going to be really helpful. When you're trying to look at temperatures. The
yeah,
100%.
pressures are
yeah,
pressures, right? But the
for
temperatures,
sure.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. How about ventilation and safety gear? What do you guys think on that?
Well,
Well,
so as far as, all right, go ahead, Daniel. Sorry.
I'll let Jesus talk to that.
Okay, all right. So, I'm pretty recently, out the field. As you all know, as far as the safety gear, that's a given, regardless if you're working on anything. Because you don't want to cut yourself, you don't want stuff flying in your eye, and man, that stuff happens. It could be something that's I've seen a hose pop, just because it's old and it's brittle. And really, I mean, honestly, you should probably be getting rid of the older stuff. If you see it's worn out, it's kind of rubbed out, you should just go ahead and get rid of them. But yeah, as far as the safety gear, for sure. You want to have your boots, safety, steel toe boots, glasses, gloves, everything that's going to protect you, against the stuff that you're working on. As far as proper ventilation, you also, I mean, as I'm sure y'all know as well as I do, that the ventilation in an area where you're working can sometimes can be confined. It's like real tight. So like any little thing that happens, you're brazing, heck, you're just hooking up. You're gonna have a little bit of de minimis coming off, and you just don't want to breathe that stuff for yourself, and you just want to make sure that you are working in a proper ventilated area. That way you can avoid as much hazard as possible.
I don't know
Yeah,
about you,
I mean,
Jesus, but I remember sweating out a R-22 compressor
Yeah.
with my
Oh
head down
man.
in there in the condenser, and just that little bit left over creates some not pleasant
Nasty.
stuff to breathe in.
Yeah.
And with something like R-32, you want to be even more cautious.
yeah. I mean, we've always had the oxygen displacement characteristic of refrigerant in the first place. Same thing goes with nitrogen. If you're working in enclosed areas, enclosed environments, you need to have ventilation and an escape plan. I mean, I know that that's not something that we like to pride ourselves in, but I think I was told quite a long time ago on safety glasses. I got really tired of getting stuff in my eye, and sometimes you get that warning. You get the one that's like right next to your eye or whatever. If you
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, that's a warning, right? From above, the universe, whatever you want to say, right? Um, and yeah, somebody one time told me that, like it's fine, sometimes people make fun of you for wearing all the safety gear and all that kind of stuff. But the guy told me, he said, you let that soon to be one-eyed guy laugh all he wants.
Yeah.
So I mean, no offense to anybody out there, but I mean, I thought that was pretty good. I mean, I wear safety glasses pretty well constant, not while I do, sit in front of a computer or whatever that I do now or talking on the phone, but yeah, it's safety is definitely important. You only got one back, you only got two knees, you only got two eyes, that kind of thing. And taking care of yourself goes a long way. I mean, everybody knows who's plenty of people is worn out. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and throw it out there too. A lot of us work on rooftops and all that. Some of us have the skin for sun, maybe more so than others. I don't. I got sunburnt a whole lot, and lots of sunburn early on in your years can end up being stuff you don't want to have to deal with later.
Very
So
true.
yeah, some sunscreen, a big hat, maybe long sleeves, stuff like that really comes in handy, and it keeps you comfortable. Over a long
And
period of time.
maybe even a safety harness if you're up on the roof. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Right.
I'm just like, really, I gotta put this on. But hey, if you fall,
Yeah.
so safety first, right?
Yeah. Which you can always lean on OSHA and stuff like that. I know heating and air guys love to joke about that, but I mean there's definitely some
They're there
things.
for a reason.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, I think if you've done it long enough, there's been plenty of situations where you might have been placed in an unsafe environment, something like that, and it's good to be able to go home at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. So, what do you think about leak detection? That's one key thing I think that's a little different. Like if you're using an electronic leak detector.
Yeah, it's yeah, I believe you're not capable to use the heated diode
Correct.
leak detections, right? Is that correct? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so I got a leak detector for sale. If anybody if anybody
Anybody
wants,
needs one for 410a
yeah.
or 22?
And well, I'll tell you what, if you remember what a halide leak detector is, or a halide,
Yeah.
um, you can join me in having joint pain, I guess. But because I mean that's a bit old school, but if you don't know, it used to use an open flame and the flame would change color to let you know that you were leaking refrigerant. Um, pretty old school, but yeah, so anything that might, help to cause excess heat, like a heated diode, something like that, open flames or whatever, it's highly recommended not to use any of those things at all.